Welcome back, everyone, to Goody and Johnny Mo at the Movies. Today we are going to be doing episode 30. This is very nice on our year anniversary, just about, that we started all this last year. So thank you so much for joining us again, whether it's via YouTube or any of our podcast stations. So we are going to be doing 1917, a movie that's up for quite a few Academy Awards tonight. We got to see this a few weeks ago, and we're going to bring you our thoughts in just a minute. Before that, we're doing our traditional drink of the night.
I am drinking a very nice, dark German Hofbrau Dunkel.
And I'm doing a Sam Adams seasonal. This is a Cold Snap. Very nice, crisp, seasonal beer. So thank you so much for joining us.
So this will actually be technically our first Triple X episode. The inside joke in there is that 30 is XXX in Roman numerals.
Yep, and I think that's one that your wife enjoyed when you told her that joke.
Yes.
I'm sure. So this film was directed by Sam Mendes, and it is a World War I movie following these two British soldiers, and they basically have to deliver a message to another platoon that's about to go into battle against the German army, and because they're basically about to fall into a trap.
Right. Now, Sam Mendes is, I don't know that Sam Mendes is a household name, director-wise, but he did direct one of my favorite movies of all time, American Beauty, back in, I think...
was that 90?
99?
That sounds about right.
98 or 99?
98, 99.
Very, very late 90s. And that's, to me, that's a 4-star movie.
He's done, and then he's also done 2 Bond films. I believe he did Skyfall, and he definitely did Skyfall.
Yeah.
And then I think he did one after that. I can't remember that one off the top of my head right now. But yeah, I know he did a couple of Bond films.
Now, actor-wise in this film, there's a lot of cameos.
Yes.
By some well-known people.
Yep.
And then with the two main characters that the story is following, those are
much younger,
relatively unknown people.
Newer guys, yeah. So there's a lot of the cameos in here. We got Mark Strong is in this, Benedict Cumberbatch, Colin Firth,
and the guy from Game of Thrones,
and Richard Madden. He's at the very end of the film, plays a little cameo.
Now, I'm actually kind of glad that the two main characters, so to speak, are relatively unknown people, because I think that plays better, because if we had to see, if these were, cast by, really well-known actors, say, a George Clooney, or, even when he was younger, whatever, I think it would have been less, I think it would have been too centralized. It would have been too much about them and their, all their inflections and all their acting, whereas with this case, they look like regular people, they look like normal people, and then you feel that way towards them, these are actual, real soldiers. It's not really, it's not, you're not watching.
You're not
actors,
associating the name.
Yeah, you're not watching actors playing a part. You're actually kind of, these actually, you feel like these are real people, and you're following them on their journey. So I think it creates more of an authentic feel by having these no-name people.
And what Sam Mendes does in this film, which is a great feat, is that this film is basically set up to look like one continuous shot for the majority of this film, where you really don't see any cuts.
And I think me and you both kind of knew that going in.
Yeah, well, I knew there was supposed to be. I heard that there were long continuous shots. But I didn't realize that the entire film was set up to look like this.
See, I had seen, some previews from the film, and to me it just looked like a standard, World War I movie. And then it started getting, a lot of praise, and I was like, all right, well, what's the big deal? It doesn't really look like all that. But then I had heard from a couple people that, how the film was made. It was like these, long continuous shots, which all of a sudden, that makes it a completely different type of film, and I'm okay with that. So I kind of knew that going in, so I was actually interested in seeing how they were going to pull that off.
Now, I know with your knowledge, with me, this is the first time that I'm ever seeing a film with this style where they're doing these huge long scenes, and it's like I said, it's making it look like it's one continuous shot. Yeah. Now, like, I know you've seen films that have done something like this or have tried this before.
Yeah, you know, there's a lot of films that are well known for long like certain individual shots that took a long time. So like the opening sequence to Touch of Evil from the late 50s, which was a really good film directed by Orson Welles, starring Charlton Heston and Orson Welles as well. And the opening sequence is like a couple of minutes long, and it's the camera's really kind of moving back and forth in among characters and cars and stuff. You know, that's a really well-known scene. There's a movie with Nicolas Cage called Snake Eyes. I forget who directed it.
Oh god, that was back in the 90s, I think.
Yeah,
right?
But that was famous for, like, I think a shot where like it was like following these people in an arena, you know, like, and it was like, I think it was like a boxing match, you know, and it was a really long tracking shot. Now granted, they had scenarios where they were able to creatively put in their cuts, so it extended, it's, you know, it gives the feeling that it's one continuous shot, but they actually were creatively able to edit it so that it appeared that way. But this entire movie does that.
Feels that way.
And from what I've seen, I've actually seen two movies that have done that. One is Alfred Hitchcock's Rope from the, I'm pretty sure it's the 50s, where there's most of the action takes place, like, I think in one room, but it's like, it's either 10 8-minute shots edited together or eight 10-minute shots edited together. I forget how it worked. But, you know, it was like, you know, almost like, you know, going to a play almost. Right. But they were filming it. And, you know, the technology back then is, it was like the breaking points were very obvious. You know, they couldn't just seamlessly do it like today they would do, I think, on a computer. They had to, like, you know, the camera either went past something or zoomed in on something and zoomed out. So you knew where the breaks were. And plus, if you just looked at your watch, you were just like, yeah, okay, boom. The other movie that is, I can't say it's well known because it's a foreign film, but there is a film called Russian Ark that is actually a really good film that takes place, I think, in the Hermitage Museum in Moscow or Russia, whatever it is, and it actually is it actually, without any fancy camera work, is one long continuous shot from beginning to end, and it goes through the entire museum, and it kind of acts out these things in each room. Yeah. And they actually had a scenario, I believe, when they did that film, something screwed up in the first 10 minutes, and they were like, okay, let's do it again, and we got to get it right, because it wasn't like it wasn't like a high budget film. It was kind of very independent, I think. So they started it over within 10 minutes, and they did make it all the way through to the end. And that actually, you know, is a film worth watching. You know, and that type of experimental film like that doesn't automatically command 4 stars. It's still got to be a good film, but you got to give them credit for what they're trying to do.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's what this movie is. Like, you know, I give Sam Mendes and the filmmaker, you know, credit for what they're doing. You know, and in that sense, it excels. But like we're going to talk about it, like, you know, to me, this film is not a 4-star movie, but it's a very good movie. It excels in certain things, and it really doesn't excel in other areas.
I mean, you know, and we've talked about this even before we filmed this, is that the story itself, we feel, is, at least me personally, I feel like the story is a very basic film. It's, you know, it's basically these two guys have to deliver, they basically have to get from point A to point B and deliver a message.
They have a message.
Like, and that is essentially the plot of this film, and it's basically what happens really in between in the adventure, you know, the walk that these guys go on.
I mean, the movie just basically starts with this guy laying in a field against a tree, and then someone goes to him to say the general wants to see you, and then they walk together to the general's office, and then they get the orders, and then they get out, and it's getting. The rest of the movie is getting the message to the other general and some other part of France.
And the camera work in this opening scene is really amazing, because it's, you know, you basically open up on this guy, he gets up and they start walking, and they're in this kind of grassy area, and all of a sudden they start walking, and then they start going into the trench that's made up. And it just follows him, and this entire time the camera's kind of like almost panning around. So at some point you see their front view, and then once they start to go into the trench, it goes to their back. So you see them walking away. And along the entire trench are all these soldiers that are either sitting and kind of like just not really doing anything, just kind of hanging out. And John and I have found out that some of these were like additional like cameramen that were just dressed up as soldiers.
Yeah, because the camera, fluidly goes in and out of the scene, in various places, in order, strategically, instead of having, all the people operating the camera, not dressed up like they're at work. They actually had scenarios where the camera was being moved to someone who was in costume for the scene, and then he kind of passed off to somebody else. And as soon as he passed off the camera, he was able to join in the scene, like as a background, so that you don't have that scenario where, like, you got to make sure all these people that are holding the camera aren't in the scene, because they will look completely out of place.
Yeah, and it was just really well done. And I keep I'm watching it, and I remember just watching this first scene as the guys get the message that they get their orders that they have to march to this other platoon, and they grab their gear and they're starting to walk out, and I'm like, wow, it's still shooting. I'm like, I was really looking hard to find where they could have actually cut, and it's almost extremely difficult to find it, because there wasn't anything that they had passed by or anything that could have interfered with the view of the shot that says, okay, we're going to cut here and then we're going to reshoot the next scene.
Well, sometimes they were going past a wall,
but I feel like you almost didn't even, but it's almost like you still saw them. Yeah. Like, I don't ever remember a shot in the beginning where you went by something and they were completely out of view.
Yeah.
And that to me was amazingly well done. And I don't know what special effects that they used. I know they did. I know this wasn't one long continuous shot. It was just made to look that way.
Mean, at the very least, in the middle of the film, there is a part where he is unconscious.
He gets knocked out.
He gets knocked out.
Yeah.
Then there are a couple of shots where they walk into a very, like a dark room.
Yeah, like low lit. Yeah.
And then all of a sudden the screen almost goes completely black. So yeah. So they're not limited in the sense that Hitchcock was basically limited to the length of film in one reel.
Well, and also the technology at the time.
Right. Now, because what they can do today, they're just limited to however long they want to go, I think.
Yeah.
And then creatively get an edit in there. So I am curious to figure out how many.
I wonder how long these shots were.
Yeah.
Like, I want, like, were these like 5-minute shots, 3-minute shots? Because at one point
I'm sure they're all different lengths.
I just keep thinking to myself, if these guys screwed up a line, they got to go all the way back.
Well, at the end, keep in mind, like,
and some of it could have been ad-libbed,
I'm sure the movie was not perfect.
Right.
But things that happen, like people accidentally bump into each other in real life. So maybe two people weren't supposed to bump into each other, but they did.
They just let it happen.
But you know what? That's how life is.
Yeah.
So it's
like
okay.
Some very small incidentals could have probably just been let go. But it's like, well, if an actor forgets his lines, or something like that happens, because then what do? You
might actually get away with it. I mean, how many times are you in the middle of a conversation and you forget what you were going to say?
Yes.
And maybe 10 seconds later you finally get it. So it's like,
but that's usually not movie magic,
Right.
The magic of the film is that like everything's all plotted out and set up for you.
Right. But the movie is designed to be so realistic as opposed to a staged.
It was, and I know there's always like ad lib in every film, so I'm sure this film is no different than that, and most likely had scenes set up that way. It's just really interesting when you start to like get. I'm almost like more interested in how they did this than the film itself.
Well, yeah, I really think a making of either short, or I would almost want to see a full documentary.
When this finally gets put out on like Blu-ray or 4K and stuff, like I would love to see the behind the scenes extras on this and how they shot it,
because that is really
it was just really well done, and. These two guys basically get word. One of the soldiers. The reason why he gets pulled into this whole thing is that his brother is in the platoon that is about to go into battle against the Germans when they think they have the Germans on the run. But the whole thing is a trap.
A very carefully
laid out plan. And
by the Germans that apparently us on the offensive, they baited the hook.
Yeah.
We took the bait, and we were going right into a trap.
Yep. So the whole thing is like, and they were on like a time frame, like you had to get there by a certain time, otherwise it was going to be too late.
And I don't think this is based on any true events. I think this is a completely
I can't remember if it's normally they put that at the beginning
story,
of the film.
characters, yeah.
I don't recall seeing that. And anything that I've read, I don't remember that these names of these soldiers were
or even
were
the incident.
people.
You know, I don't think it's recreating an incident at all.
It's not like Dunkirk is based on a true story.
Yes.
Right.
I believe totally fictional characters, except for maybe like the generals in charge.
Yeah. But like this, I can't recall.
You know, even like Saving Private Ryan. You know, the story of Saving Private Ryan, I think, is completely fictional.
Yeah.
You know,
just based around the real war. But I got to say, for me, the beginning of the film was a little slow because it was almost like real time. So these guys were just basically these two soldiers. You just follow them walking along from this from their platoon, walking away and trying to reach this the next set of coordinates that they had to go to.
Yeah.
And at one point, they stumble along into this route of caves, and it was found to be like an old German.
I think it's a German bunker.
Bunker, right?
And they actually, I think they said like, wow, the Germans didn't do that bunkers a lot better than we did.
Right. and for me, up until that point, it was a little slow for me.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, a rat sets off a
booby trap,
like a booby trap, like a buried mine.
Yeah.
And it sets off this huge explosion. And then from that point on, to me, the film really starts to pick up. But I mean, it's what else are you going to do? Because it's
well, to me,
if it's supposed to be in real time and you're walking from point A to point B.
Right. It's gonna, you basically, I mean, when the movie starts, they're in the trenches, but they're not in the middle of battle. It's
right.
in between. It's after, at least like after battle or a day after the battle. So now, they're walking around and they're talking back and forth.
Yep.
So you're getting the dialogue, and then later on, after the German bunker scene, they're in a field and they're watching a dogfight.
Yeah.
In the air, which
This
I can imagine had to have been CG.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. I think this was again another shot that was incredibly well done.
Yeah.
Because of, again, you were not seeing any cuts. Like there's nothing that looks like it's cut. So you have this plane, it gets shot down, and you're watching the plane come towards the ground, and then it basically crashes through.
Well, it goes out of sight,
like
be under a hill almost because of the angle, and then it comes over, and I think that's where
and then it crashes through the fence, and then it just and then it stops like right in front of the two main characters.
So now you have a German guy burning in that plane.
Yes.
And to me, this is the one part of the story that I found to be a little, I don't know, I found it a little hard to believe because they saved the German. When the one guy says, they pull the German out.
They pull him
it's
out
like they want to give him water and put him out and they give him water.
Yeah.
And, basically what the German guy does is he takes his knife out and he stabs one of the guys.
Yeah.
And a lot of people probably sit there and go, like, oh my God, what a jerk. But it's like, you know what? This is World War I.
Yeah.
They're at war. When you're at war, at the end of the day, you're trying to kill as many of the enemy as you want. And if you can, if you can do it in a sneaky way, like, it's, at the end of the day, you think they're going to kill you. You're just trying to save your life. So,
if they're trying to kill you, though, why would they pull you out of the plane and give you water?
But that's the thing. It's like, you know what? Like, I'm that German guy. Look at these stupid Americans. As soon as they
they're British. Remember this?
They're British.
This is the British Army.
Look at these stupid Brits. As soon as they get me out, I'm gonna kill them. It's not about there's no niceties. It's not like, oh, we're friends now. To me, I think the Brits really either would have, in all honesty, under normal circumstances in real life, they would have either let him die in the plane and not really cared either way, or if they wanted to do the humane thing, they would have just shot him right there. He's dead. We got him, and we put him out of his misery, and that was humane. But to actually save his life, what are they going to do? They're going to go take him on that trip with them? Like, what are they doing? They're going to have a picnic?
That might have actually made for a more interesting scene if they made him a prisoner and they brought him along. That would have been interesting.
But look what they did in Saving Private Ryan. Like Saving Private Ryan, they got this guy.
Yeah.
And they had that German guy, and they were like, we can't bring him with us. We're either killing him or we're letting him go.
Right.
And they wind up letting him go.
Yeah.
But I think in real life, they would have just put a bullet in his head and kept going. You're at war.
But like you even said to me in the past, I think you think the only reason why they ended up doing this was because they end up killing. So the guy who gets the guy who's supposed to deliver the message, because it's his brother that's in the platoon, they end up stabbing him, and he ends up dying.
Yeah, and that was basically, I think, a plot device. He was. Now you got the one guy by himself. He's going on his adventure solo now, which, I think if you would have had both of these guys talking to each other the whole film, I think that might have actually gotten a little boring. So I think it makes sense that it's like now it's a different phase of the film.
Yeah,
and
it goes into and it picks up.
It changed it up.
The action definitely picks up a little bit more too, because now he gets on a boat. No, not a boat. He gets on a truck. Right.
Yes. Yeah. He gets on a truck where he runs into, I think, Mark Strong's
character.
Character in his platoon.
Yep.
And that actually helped because the movie's a little over 2 hours, and at the end of the day, it probably would have taken him more than 2 hours to get from that tree where the movie started to the trench he's got to get to. But so he gets in a truck, and they actually traverse a large distance, and I think that actually helped with the time dynamic.
Eventually, when he gets out of there and he starts walking through, it's almost it's a French town that's been dilapidated, it's destroyed.
Yeah.
There's stone pillars everywhere that's kind of just or stone structures that are just completely knocked down. And he starts going through it, and he ends up getting chased by this one French soldier.
Yes.
Right. And then at some point he ends up hiding, going into this one basement, and finds this one French woman. Is it French woman I'm thinking?
Yeah, no, she's French. Because this movie takes place in France.
Right? Yeah, so a French woman that's down there, and then she nurses him a little bit with her baby's down there. She's protecting the baby the entire time. And then he's down there for a period of time, and then he gets back up and gets back out there. And then after that, that's the river scene.
Yes.
Which I think that's amazing too, because you got to remember, the camera's following this guy the entire time.
And it's on the river somehow.
A lot of this would have been like a traditional film. You would have cut scenes where he would have fallen into the river, cut, go into the river. He goes a certain distance, cut, go to the next section. It doesn't happen. The camera follows him down
in a continuous flow,
and it follows him through the river, down the next fall that he has, and then it just, as he's going through, all of a sudden you start to see bodies. Just on the shore of the river, right? On the shoreline, and it's like you said before, it's in different stages of decay, because these bodies have been dead for a period of time.
Yeah, I mean the planning and development that had to go into the choreography of these shots. This is what the people are going to be doing, and this is how we're going to have the camera follow them. This movie really had to take a lot of planning.
Yeah, I agree.
Because you have almost the same amount of planning with what the characters are going to do, but then you can't. There's no do-overs. Or if there is a do-over, you got to do it all over.
Right, you got to start it from wherever you began that scene and do it again. Because if these are really long, continuous shots, going all the way back to the beginning has to be a pain. If it's a 7-minute shot and you're at minute 5.5 and you screw up, now you got to go all the way back and start over.
That's a real pain in the neck.
And you know what? I didn't think about this before, but I really have to give the actors a lot of credit to be on point and on mark.
Yeah, they have to be in character the whole time.
Right. And you know what? I think a lot more credit, and I'm actually realizing this a lot now as we're talking about this, they should be given a lot more credit for these scenes, because these two guys that really weren't as well known, but the fact that they were able to do what they did and make it believable and real for the length of time that they did it is commendable. And I want to say that now because I think that's really well done.
Something I didn't realize before, but I realize it now, is there's been in this type of scenario, there are people that have compared this type of movie to like a Broadway play. And they're like, on Broadway, it's one continuous take. You have to be in character the whole time.
Right.
And it's like, you know what? It's not the same thing. Because Broadway plays, a lot of the action is exaggerated.
Yeah.
A lot of the, it doesn't really take place in the real world. In fact, mistakes on Broadway almost embraced.
Yeah, it does, yeah. And
you
kind of roll with it. Like,
you roll with it.
Yeah, exactly.
You can actually turn around and play to the audience.
Yep,
absolutely. You can, so like.
And they can get away with that.
Yes, and that's okay. It can almost, skirt the border of like almost interactive entertainment.
Yep.
That's not the case in a film where you're you're trying to portray something that's happening in the real world.
Right.
Where it's got to look right.
And I think Sam Mendes does a fantastic job in this film doing that. Something that we've discussed because it is Academy Awards night, that this film is up for cinematography as well as a number of other awards.
Yeah.
And I truly feel, and I think John does too, I think this film wins cinematography hands down.
Yeah.
I don't know, I'll be honest, I don't know the other contenders up against
it.
it, but I really can't see any other film beating what these guys were able to accomplish.
Because that's one of the areas that it excelled in.
Absolutely, 100%.
Because it was hard to do.
Yeah.
I think the other areas that this movie, I think, really excelled in was art decoration, set design.
Yep, I agree.
Because what they did with this film is because they had the film for so long, and for the most part, everybody is in motion during the film, is they really had very large, expansive sets that had to actually cover a lot of ground. If you had an aerial overview of the set of this film, it might actually be like, a mile or two.
Just the French town alone, when he's getting chased through by the German soldiers, and he's going like in and out of the rubble. I thought that was amazing because it was almost like a labyrinth at one point where he's going through like this puzzled maze, and for them to be able to follow that and make it feel like he's running through this real town and you're following along with that.
Yeah.
I thought it was amazingly well done, and just how everything looked like it had just been destroyed.
Yeah.
Like it's on fire. Everything's on fire around him, and it was so well done.
I mean, you just have all these details, and it's like, it's the quality of the details has to be continuous.
Yes.
Because if you're doing like a regular movie, like they might have been able to get away with like 5 trench sets, but they had to do like an
enormously long set
network of trenches. So one of the things I think about this film is, I always wonder what a film would have been had they done it in black and white. And I think this would have actually been a good movie in black and white, but it would have been a different film in black and white. Because I think a black and white version of this film, even if they had did like the long film sequences, I think it would have been more focused on, I think, the actors' faces and their psyche. So I think it would have been more of a psychological film, really getting into the shoes of the character. Whereas being in color, I really think that, part of the reason of this film is I think he really wanted to recreate the look and feel of 1917 World War I trench warfare, down to all the details, including, even though a lot of World War I films are black and white, and in your head you almost kind of think of it like that, but life is not in black and white. So I think he wanted to get the color and the texture and the look down right to the point where if you literally were there, this is what you would be seeing.
I think that's a great summation of it, because it's almost like, as an audience member, you get that point of view of you're the fly on this guy's shoulder, right? And as you're going through, like, you get to kind of like visualize everything as like what he's experiencing. In other films, you don't a lot of war films you don't get that. One that came to our mind is that Saving Private Ryan in the beginning. You talk about this. You've said this before to me. How that opening sequence, D-Day, getting on the beach in Normandy, is Spielberg went for that authentic feel of what it was like to be on that boat as you're about to get onto the beach in Normandy.
Yep.
And it did feel like that. Like that opening scene felt a little bit like this film. I could see the comparisons of those two scenes.
Yeah, and that to me was a much tougher to do because of all the action involved. However, Spielberg wasn't limiting himself in
to a continuous shot. Exactly.
He was able to comprise the scene and edit it the way he wanted.
And with a scene like that, you had to, because the action from the guns on the land to the soldiers arriving on the sea, you had to set it up that way. Where this was totally different. And eventually the soldier ends up surviving and makes it to a platoon that takes him to the front line. He takes him to where he has to go. But unfortunately, by the time he gets there, you're starting to see he's in this trench and he's running through trying to find this
getting to the head.
To the head of wherever this I don't know if it's a lieutenant colonel or it wasn't a general, but it was someone like whoever the lead commander is of the platoon. He's trying to get there. And these guys are lined up, ready to go, and he doesn't reach the guy yet, and all of a sudden you hear the orders, and these guys are going.
Yep.
So
at the end of the day, he doesn't get there.
No, he doesn't get there in time. He fails in that respect, but he ends up at one point he can't run through the trench anymore. So he goes up,
and
he starts going across. He's basically perpendicular to his whole platoon.
To the platoon, yeah.
And at one point he even makes contact with one of the guys that gets knocked down and gets up.
Yeah.
And John and I talked about this, and we were saying,
was that an accident?
Yeah, was it an accident or was it planned? Either way, it was fantastic.
Yeah.
And to me, it felt real because with all those guys running across, he's bound to make contact with somebody. Like, people aren't going to be trying, oh, I'm sorry, you're running, let me avoid you. No, like, everyone's trying to do their job.
Right.
And
anybody going out isn't expecting someone to come across their path.
Yeah, no one's looking sideways, looking for that. You're all looking ahead to meet to face the enemy.
Yeah, and I can tell you right now, with that time, if they were going for that option, you don't want to have the scenario where they miss.
Right.
So how do if I'm the filmmaker and I wanted to like hedge my bets there, I'd be like, okay, look, he's gonna run across. We're gonna have like 10 guys lined up that are gonna try and hit him.
Yes.
And if the first guy misses, the second guy goes for it. If the second guy misses, the third, and eventually someone's gonna hit, and then the rest of the guys know to avoid. But like that's the way to make sure that happens. And I think I can't imagine they would have put all their eggs in one basket and said, look, because if they don't, like if he doesn't hit, the shot still goes.
Yeah.
But you missed that.
No, I think you're right.
You would miss that.
They probably had a number of guys like lined up and like, okay, go. And eventually like, all right, we're good. We got the shot.
And this is something we talked about earlier ourselves. We'll explain what that means at the end. We had, when you're filming these long shots, what happens if somebody makes a mistake? And it's like, mistakes happen in real life all the time. Yeah. People walk into each other. People are about to say something and they forget what they're going to say, and they don't say anything, and then they realize what they're going to say. Someone might cough, someone might trip,
right. Someone might sneeze,
someone might bump. People that bump into each, that's what happens in real life. So it is what it is.
But everything that they did, I had to say, I really commend this film because it really made it feel real.
Yeah.
As a viewer watching this film, and we got to experience this in the movie theater, it really felt like you were following this guy's journey, and I thought that was really well done. It just didn't feel like we were watching a film. I think Sam Mendes did a great job of trying to make us feel a part of what was happening and going on, and that I think connects you a little bit more to the people in the film and what you want to see happen to them, because you want to see this guy succeed.
Yeah.
And ultimately, at the end,
he only half succeeds.
Yeah, he helps. He does help. He reaches the end, and the person in charge is actually Benedict Cumberbatch.
Right. Yeah, and when he got to Benedict Cumberbatch, they had already gotten
the
out.
first wave had started to go.
Now keep in mind, if he actually gets there on time, and the first wave doesn't go out, that's an enormous action sequence that doesn't occur.
That's wiped out.
So he almost has to kind of, he's got to half fail and
it's
half
like,
succeed.
Right, and it's like it's meant to.
Because if he completely saves the day, it's like
nothing
he made
happens.
it, nothing happens.
Right.
But
so like you have to have that drama of these soldiers going out and unfortunately dying, because it means more at the end when he's able to save the rest of the platoon from getting the same fate as the first wave.
And at the end of the day, it was a Herculean effort to get there on time at all.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like like he slacked off. And the other part of getting a lot of people out there in the battle getting wounded is that later on in the movie, there's like that kind of on the field army type hospital.
Yeah.
Where people are shot and wounded and bleeding and they're cutting off limbs and pumping up people full of morphine, and you hadn't seen any of that at that point. Like basically,
there was just soldiers lying. I mean, we saw soldiers dead that were lying down.
The nastiest stuff that you saw up until that point, I think, was literally dead and decaying bodies in the field, and really dead, decaying.
That had been there for days to weeks.
Yeah. So now you have these guys that are alive, and getting their legs cut off. So I think and
it's a huge area. Like it's not like you're talking about 10 beds.
Yeah.
You're talking about hundreds of soldiers that are just coming out of the battle that just happened.
Yeah, and you definitely wanted that type of scene in there, because that is absolutely a recreation of the horrors of World War I.
Absolutely.
Because I think that it was even worse. Basically World War I back. I think those were just horrible scenarios.
And then the character he as he gets there, he just realizes, he starts going through and he starts shouting out the friend the other soldier that was with him on the start of the journey that he died, it's his brother that's in this platoon. Mm-hmm. So now it's up to him to find him. So now this soldier he's out there shouting out his brother's name. And finally, he doesn't hear anything at first, and then finally he walks out of that tent to these soldiers that are coming back from the battle, and he finally does see someone that picks their head up and finds him.
Yeah, and I think he recognizes his voice almost. I thought he heard him.
Well, because he said to him that he says, my brother sounds. Does he say his brother sounds like me?
Yeah.
In the beginning of the film, the guy makes a reference about his brother, saying that they sound alike, not that they look alike, but that he's like, you'll know him. That's what he says, you'll know him when you see him or hear him.
Yeah.
And I think they even make a reference to that. But he gives him. I don't know if the Brits had the dog tags like the American soldiers do.
I think they did.
He handed him something from his brother.
I think it was dog tags.
It was something that he handed him.
A token.
A token, right? Token. Something that he gave him.
Yeah. Now the brother was the one that he finds is played by the guy who's one of the Starks.
Richard Madden. He played Robb Stark. Yeah.
And he looked good. He looked a little bit older than what he did in Game of Thrones, but he looked good.
Yeah.
So just want to highlight the one scene with Benedict Cumberbatch, which I thought was really good, because when the guy came across Sinestro's
Mark
Strong's
his
character,
platoon, his group.
One of the best lines of dialogue scenarios in the movies, when Mark Strong is talking to him and he says, when you give the message, make sure there's witnesses. And he was almost like, why? And he's like, because some people just want the battle, they just want the war. Meaning, they're not going to listen to reason.
Yep.
They're committed. And when he gets to Benedict Cumberbatch, he's at the point where he's already
sent out the first wave.
Yeah, and there's no turning back.
Yeah,
he doesn't want to hear anything from anybody.
Yep.
Because if you're a guy in command, it's you almost have to.
It's all or none.
Yeah,
you're in it or you're not.
You're either all in or you're out.
Yeah.
And, you can't second guess yourself. And it's not like this. So once he's in, the troops have already gone out, and this is it. And now we got him on the run, and he's trying to convince them you need to read these orders. You need. And it takes him a while.
Because he didn't read him at first. He handed it to him, and he's like, no, he's like, this is from the general.
Yeah.
He's like, you have to read these.
Yeah. And his mind is going 100 miles an hour with the present situation.
Yes.
It's hard to kind of slow him down and say, you need to read this.
Yeah.
And if they were by themselves,
it might have been a different outcome.
You could see where the message wouldn't have gotten through at all.
But if I'm trying to remember if Benedict Cumberbatch at that point does look around the room and sees the other soldiers looking at him, like, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
And he ends up, and then eventually he does end up reading the message, and then calls back everybody and holds off the second wave.
Because I think Benedict Cumberbatch's cameo role was one of the strongest of the film. Like because he's kind of like one of those like stoic, like Doctor Strange, like reserved like that. And, solid, but in control and
like we're doing what I say.
Yeah,
and I have to say, all the cameos by some of these more known actors, I thought were all well done.
Yeah.
Colin Firth in the beginning, kind of like sets the tone as the general, and then you see Benedict Cumberbatch, and then even Richard Madden at the end has a very small, short role, but you can almost see the pain that he feels when he realizes that his brother is dead.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really well done by all of them, but.
And I think the scene with Mark Strong when they were getting in the truck, that was one of those scenes where like people were like passing the camera along.
Yeah.
And that was
again more people, you guys in crew in uniform.
People in uniform in the truck were ones either handing it or getting it or passing it off. So that way, when if the angle changed, they were in uniform.
Yeah, absolutely.
And and I don't know too many movies that have ever, or that I'm aware of, that ever like employed that type of strategy, because you usually don't have a risk of that type of scenario.
Right.
Even with a regular movie, there are always those things where you see like somebody who's in the shot that shouldn't be. You usually find those in like the gaps or the hidden errors, people reflections and stuff like that.
Now, overall, I think it was really interesting to see because of what Sam Mendes did and what he was able to accomplish with this. Film almost appearing as this one long continuous shot. I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed the set design. Like I said, I'm almost more interested in the behind the scenes of how they did all this than I was of the story itself. Because the story is a very basic story. I don't think it's not too complicated. It's very simple. The actors I thought did a really good job in it, but I just overall I really was I was really turned on by the way that they ended up making this film happen.
Yeah, I mean, this is really like, it falls in the genre of like, I mean, it's experimental film. That type of scenario, definitely experimental film with what they're trying to accomplish, because it's not taking the normal conventions of filmmaking. It's trying to do a movie in a certain type of way that is very uncommon, but when it works. And if it works well, it's very impressive. And this is something I didn't really think about before, but like the common moviegoer is not very active. They just kind of sit. It makes me wonder how many people going into the film even, at what point did they pick up on that this was one continuous shot? Or did they at all?
Right.
Because so many people, go in there with their phones. They're not even watching the movie the whole time. There could have been an edit. They would just assume they were catch it, and they didn't catch it. You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised how lazy and inattentive the average moviegoer is these days. So I'm curious if people going to see it actually really were aware of that. I would like to think they were.
Yeah, I would like to think so too. But overall, I think this film's going to win some awards tonight at the Academy Awards. I really do think it's going to win cinematography, and if it is, and I'm sure it is nominated for set design, it might win for that as well.
It's probably also nominated for music. I know you would.
Yeah,
you enjoyed the soundtrack. I did. I don't
enjoyed
recall the soundtrack too well, but I think it was nominated for music.
I think the soundtrack for me, it just kind of, as the film went on, it just started to really build, I thought, with the tension in the film, and I thought that was well done. But yeah, to me, I did enjoy that. I don't know if it's going to win director or best picture.
Yeah. See, now in the Golden Globes,
it did win.
It won best picture, but the Golden Globes has two awards for best picture: one for dramatic and one for musical comedy. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, one for musical comedy.
Yes.
This one for dramatic. So, in my opinion, I think those really are of the nine. I think 9 films nominated for best picture. I think those are the 2 that are really going head to head.
Well, I mean, I've heard great things about Parasite. I know we didn't see it, but I know that film has been really well talked about, and unfortunately, we didn't really get to see that film. That could be a contender, and again, that's by an Asian cast, an Asian director. So we might see that might end up shocking everyone and winning.
Yeah, you never know.
You really don't. Especially with the last few years, seeing with some of the results, you don't know what's going to end up winning.
And it's also they have those scenarios where they actually I think Hollywood in some ways. This Academy Award is being praised for its diversity, but it's also being criticized for its diversity.
Oh, big time. Well, because if you think about it, the main cast and all the main actors and supporting actor roles, it's all white for the most part.
Yeah,
with the exception of I think one or two. I think one of the females, I think is African American, and then I don't know if it's a supporting role or main is not Javier Bardem. Oh gosh, I forget his name. But there is someone else that's Hispanic that got nominated. So
right.
But as far as the directors,
all
the directors are.
Well, you have an Asian guy.
Yeah. Oh, you got one Asian guy. That's right. You got one Asian guy. But no female directors, and the one female director. There was a female director that did a great film that's actually I think nominated, but she's not nominated. Little Women.
I want to say Greta Gerwig.
Yeah, Greta Gerwig. That's it. Yep, that's it.
And I'll be honest with you.
You saw.
I saw Little Women.
Yeah.
I've seen most of the movies nominated. I've seen a lot of the movies nominated for Best Picture. A lot of the highly acclaimed films. And I'll be honest with you. I think Greta Gerwig should have been nominated for Best Director.
And you think she should have been nominated over Scorsese?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love Martin Scorsese, but
yeah.
The Irishman is not the greatest movie of all time. It's nowhere near his best. It's a 3-star movie at best. And to me, Scorsese, he didn't need the sympathy vote. He's gotten his best.
He has his
nominations.
Yeah.
He's won Best Director, so it's not like he's overdue righting the wrongs of the past, this and that. Not for nothing. His winning for The Departed was righting the wrongs of the past.
Yeah.
And Departed was how many years ago?
2008 or 9.
Yeah,
I'll tell you what though.
10 years ago.
But I'll say this: I love The Departed.
No, that is a good movie.
I love that movie.
But basically, it's The Irishman is nowhere near the caliber of The Departed, let alone movies like Raging Bull, Goodfellas, Taxi Driver. It's nowhere near that.
But even when you're comparing the directional, the directional category of between him and Greta Gerwig, she should have gotten a nomination. But
I think so. And how you avoid all this in the future is making the.
I think you expand.
You expand it because with 5 spots it's really hard because maybe that diversity that people are complaining about, you'd get it if they opened up to 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10. I think you're definitely going to get it.
I think this is a great conversation because I think John and I will probably do what we did last year, where we did a reaction to the Oscars. So next week, look for something like that. After tonight, we'll kind of collect our thoughts on what we think of all the winners and how it went. Another year of not having a host, so we'll kind of have our thoughts on that, and this way we can kind of chat about it a little bit.
But I think the showdown between 1917 and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is actually very interesting because I think in both cases, both directors had a film that were trying to recreate the time period.
Yeah, going for a very authentic era.
Yeah, I mean, you have what's his name,
Quentin
Tarantino trying to recreate late '60s in Hollywood. And did it very well, very nostalgically. He created the sight, sound, and feel. The use of color, I think, was a really nice color palette with lots of reds and yellows, and oranges and greens, and then brightly colored stuff. Really, really nice looking film. And then you have the 1917 color palette of your blacks and browns,
which is it's very military,
dirt and gritty.
Yeah, it was I
really
did
both,
enjoy
both
that.
of these guys really tried to recreate the time period and scenario that they were doing.
Yeah,
and they were
absolutely.
both really effective. Whereas now, like we said, it excelled in some areas, not so in others. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, in my opinion, excelled in script, acting. The story was fantastic.
The story was great.
Whereas 1917 was more of a technical effort.
Yes.
It was the story and acting not so pivotal.
It's not that the story. It's not a bad story. Don't think that at all.
No, not
I think
bad.
it was just an average.
Yeah, it's
story.
not an Academy Award winning story.
It's not complex.
Yeah.
But how they shot it was very
the
complex.
way they made the film
Yes.
and how they told the story.
How
it looked.
How they told the story.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's correct. Yeah, because I remember seeing the previews for this movie, and I'm going, it looks like a war movie.
Right.
I'm like, well, I mean, obviously it looked like a war movie, but it was like, it just looks like a regular war movie. Like, I don't know what the big deal is.
But you almost don't know any of that like continuous shot stuff until you go and see the film, or you talk to somebody who saw it.
Yeah.
Because
and
they don't portray that.
That makes it a completely different.
Yeah, because I feel like they don't portray that in the trailers. So like you don't know that until you sit down and you start watching it. And I think that for people that were going in blind and didn't know that, I think that's an interesting surprise if you paid attention and you're like, oh wow, like they're not cutting. I'm not seeing like we're not jumping from one scene to the next.
And I give it the respect for that. And incidentally, talking about the Oscars, this is actually kind of funny. I actually think Sam Mendes got Best Director for American Beauty back in the day. So it's not a matter of,
You would know better than me.
Yeah, and I think he did. And Tarantino has never gotten Best Director. And this is his last film. So
I don't think it's his last film. It's his 9th film.
I thought
he didn't say
I thought he was
film.
retiring from directing. I
don't know that.
I thought it was always promoted as his 9th and final film.
I didn't see 9th and final, but I definitely saw 9th film. I know that.
Okay. So I mean, to me, if you want to give somebody the nod for their body of work and give them their due finally, I think this is Tarantino's year. Because in all honesty, I think this is one of his absolute best films.
I think he might win for screenwriting. I think he's like he did for. He won the Golden Globes for that. I think he's going to win for this too.
I think he's definitely going to win something, but I hope they give him more than just like the.
Like almost like an appeasement academy. Like here's your screenwriting.
It's just like like almost what I feel like sometimes they did with Spike Lee. Like they were never going to give him director, but they would give him the screenwriting. And they'd give it. So like, okay, that's enough. I want Tarantino to get. I want this year to be Tarantino's year.
Yeah.
Even though I don't think Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is on par with Pulp Fiction.
I don't think it's his best film, but I think it's a really good film.
I think it's one of his best. So it's actually going to be interesting to see how everything pans out.
I guess we'll find out tonight.
Yeah. So yeah.
All right, guys. So I think with that, I think we're going to wrap this up. I hope you guys enjoyed.
Yep.
We got a couple episodes coming up. We got 2 movies that we have to look at: Ford vs. Ferrari, and then also Birds of Prey, The Emancipation of One Harley Quinn.
Yeah.
We're gonna do those this week as well, guys. So keep an eye out for that. Thanks so much for joining us.
And next time we meet, I'll tell you why my beer is only half full.
Take care, everyone. Have a good night.